Hello, you multifunctional muses. Neat a little malt mention there. Thank you, Jerry G61, for that introduction to Ralphie Review 1032. Now, I'm Ralphie, and each and every review is a whisky review or other quality spirit. It's what happens here in the Ralphie.com channel. I tend to kind of go for a deep dive. I like to get beyond the superficial, to be honest. There's plenty of superficial content, and it's thoroughly entertaining and it has its place. But it's good to kind of slow things down, take a little bit longer, and go a little bit deeper into something which we have a passion about. And my passion is Scotch whisky, of which I have spent considerable amount of time around, and I continue to take a proactive interest in. So if I walk into a bar and I'll look at the array of whiskies in the gantry, I'd probably go for a single malt. It may cost a little bit more, but I like my whisky neat. I'm not looking for ice cubes. I'm not looking for mixologist theatrics. Now, nothing against the cocktail makers, nothing against the baristas and bar professionals. It's quite a demanding job. You need to have a good basic combination of understanding human psychology when people are sober and when people are drunk. Reassure people that you're fast, quick. You've prioritised them even when they're in a queue. So you've got the psychologist, then you've got the entertainer side of it, and then you've got the sales side of it, where you have to, depending, once you've assessed people as to their state of intoxication, how can you pump a bit more money out of them? Now, I can speak with some authority on bar work because I worked briefly as a barman in a hotel in the Highlands many years ago. I didn't do the job for very long because I hated it. It's bad enough dealing with some people when they're sober, but see, when they're pished, they can be the complete and total unfettered arseholes that are your living nightmare. So, maybe maybe I read too much, or just maybe I'm a cantankerous young git becoming an old git. I don't care. I really don't care. But the whiskey that I sold the most of in the bar, where is it? Was this stuff. So welcome to my whisky review. At this moment in time, all my malt mates and pat pals and followers are now stunned in shock. What is Ralphie going to say about Johnnie Walker Red Label? What is a single malt sipper going to say about one of the most ubiquitous, bland, jobbing whisky brands on the world market? Anywhere you go in the world, people know about this brand. People don't know about Isle of Raasay. People don't know about these gems of Scotch whisky, like Bunnahabhain Cask Strength, and Glentochers, and Benrinnes, and these ones that the real treasure hunters dig deep for because they're just so phenomenal when they're working well. Just so phenomenal. And if we can't find them from official bottlers, we know through the knowledge, through the grapevine, that we can find them from independent bottlers. You know, that's still part of the freshness around Scotch whisky. But this is the absolutely polar opposite. It is everything to everybody. It is completely and totally mixable. But I'm going to give you a laugh, folks, because as a single malt sipper of over 35 years, I'm going to put my nose into Johnnie Walker Red Label here in 2024. and give you a breakdown of how it smells and tastes to a true whisky connoisseur. Now, what we're doing, we're rolling it around the glass. Just use a nice little practical Capita, strongly made glass that you can drop. It's not going to shatter, and it's not going to cost you a lot of money. You don't need fancy glassware. I roll it around the glass just to wet the side of the glass, let the alcohol start to come off the surface, and what I'm getting is a very soft, slight meringue pie, slightly malty, slightly custardy, distinctive brulee, soft, incredibly young nose, which is primarily from column whisky, not pot still whisky. The malts come from the pot stills, the column stills, the continuous stills are producing mixed mash bill Scotch whisky, which you will find bottled, if you're looking for it, as grain whisky, despite the fact, of course, that barley's a grain, and that's used for single malt. So if you're looking for confusion, get yourself into Scotch whisky. You'll find plenty of it. In fact, the confusion actually never ends the more you deep dive it. First taste. Watery, relatively bland, innocuous. It's absolutely reeking of American white oak, that's Quercus alba, which is predominantly used for the construction of bourbon casks. This taste is remarkably superficial. It's as, by the way, why not? Because when you've got big brands, they have to be everything to everybody who's too lazy to invest in educating their palate. They just want a whiskey and soda, whiskey and coke, whiskey and whatever. They want to chat the trash talk because they're with friends and it's too loud and the music's blaring, and they don't even want to think about what they're drinking, so long as they can get pished and get buzzed and hopefully, fingers crossed, not lose their wallet and get home without a smack in the face. And once they've actually finally recovered after a few days of dehydration and intermittent forgetfulness and being able to do nothing else because they've just been pished and overloading their liver, that eventually in a few days' time they'll say, oh yeah, that was a great weekend. But they won't exactly tell you what. There's not much to say about it. What they really mean is they get wazzed out their box on alcohol because that was the primary mission. The purpose of the alcohol is to carry the buzz, not the flavour. Now, does this sound harsh? I know it sounds harsh. It is harsh. It's supposed to be harsh because I'm just telling you the facts here. So if you want to quibble with me, do leave a comment. But it won't make much more difference because I'm just going to carry on with this review anyway. You've got the black label, which, to be honest, isn't that much better these days. You've got the green label, which is an absolute pitiful shadow of its former glory. And you've got the ubiquitous blue label, which is the status blended whisky that all the Ferrari riders and everybody that wants a Bugatti, they want blue label in coloured glass under a spotlight because their lives are meaningless. Simple as that. They're just sad, willful brand consumers that may or may not even have the resources to do it, but they want at least to keep up appearances and try and impress people as equally as bland, banal, and living an uneventful life as they are. So, there you have it. I'm going to add a drop of water to this. Let's give it another little... Not a lot though, it's bottled at 40%. It's not an age statement. I would say that, in my opinion, this whiskey's no more than 4 or 5 years old. There may be a little bit of older malt maybe put into the batch just to lift it up, but the grain whisky is as simple and cheap as it gets. Having said that, it's perfectly competent. It's cleanly made liquor. So let's kind of address the positives now. Fine single malt whisky is not to many people's tastes. It's demanding. It's enormously rewarding, but you need time. You need to invest in an apprenticeship to really get to know it. You can't just lift a glass of Longmorn or Springbank and get it immediately. If you're looking for a quick fix for when you're travelling through Dubai in your Lamborghini, obviously you're going to buy Macallan, because Callan is basically one of these bland, preposterous brands which is tailor-made for pretentious people. I'm getting it. Time to go up a gear. Right, so let's carry on with this review. I last enjoyed this on an aeroplane at 5,000 feet travelling over the Irish Sea. It was refreshing because, see, in aeroplanes you can't really drink. There's no point in drinking quality spirits. Drink red wine in aeroplanes or champagne, that's it. And make sure it's vintage, because otherwise you get stomach burn at altitude. I enjoyed this in a little plastic glass thing, container, with ridges to make it a little bit fancier. It had 2 drops of ice in it and a wedge of lemon. Frankly, that's all it needed. Its purpose was just to give me a little whisky kiss as I was flying in an aircraft for 45 minutes. Job done. It's not something you even bother thinking about. And this is at least there's an honesty to this. It's not made for connoisseurs. It's made for disinterested consumers that need to be persuaded, and they are persuaded because it's Johnnie Walker and they've got that label and it slopes up from the left to the right and you've got the wee walking man, so it's instantly recognisable globally. Whether that is actually what's in the bottle in the bar is another thing, but that's for another review. So I've added a drop of water to this, not too much. It's very heavily chill filtered. It's loaded with caramel, but I have to say they could have put more in it, but you can see the fake tango, the fake tan in it. Being so young, of course they've got to add, caramel colourant, fake tans in blended whisky, not a problem, not an issue. It's the landscape of it. My problem is when they put it in quality single malts and they chill filter the single malts. This is chill filtered. It helps it. It kind of removes a little bit of the roughness. Nose. More of that American white oak thing. It's almost as if they've taken a relatively neutral grain spirit and done a Jack Daniels and poured it through some charred white American oak chips and let it filter through just to get a rush of flavour out the wood. But not too much. That's the way it comes across. Sweet. Sweet, gummy, syrupy, slight ginger, slight tequila note. Yeah, tequila. It's clean in the palate. Doesn't develop much, soft ginger, a little bit of prickly tannins in the finish, then suddenly abruptly stops. That's what you get. However, I'm going to set you a challenge, and I'm repeating in 2024 what I did in Ralphie Review 145, which I recorded and posted up in 2010, which is 14 years ago. 14 years ago. Excuse me. I bought this at auction it was part of a mixed bottle, so it cost me about £10. It's a 1960s/1970s red label. It's a red label that's actually vintage. It's historical. What people don't realise, who are not big whisky drinkers, who are casual whisky drinkers, is how much the production of whisky and all spirits is now industrialised. And it's industrialised to increase alcoholic margins and reduce costs. In other words, the investment in flavour is increasingly optional. And to be honest, if you're selling big volumes of spirit, you really want it as bland as possible to appeal to everybody's taste. And when you've got increasingly the people who can afford to buy whisky have their palates super soaked and saturated with artificial sweeteners and sugars, and the palates are just corrupted by sweetness, you need to provide something that's not going to shock them. So the sensation range, particularly the bitters and sours, is really cranked down in this. But then we get to a previous generation, which you can immediately see is lighter in colour. It's lighter in colour. It just looks more natural. You nose it. Immediately, there's leather in here. There's soft leather. There is soft oak. There's a little bit of European oak. I'm immediately getting a note of sherry influence in this old Johnnie Walker, which is completely oblivious. It just isn't even there in the contemporary Johnnie Walker. So I'm going to give you some practical advice here. If you're curious, go into these spirit auctions, if near you, and you'll find that when people are clearing out houses, there's always that bottle of whiskey that nobody drank and it sat in the back of the cupboard. It could be Bell's, it could be Chivas Regal, it could be Johnnie Walker Red Label from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. Buy it. It won't cost you much. Just buy it. Make sure it's got a good neck fill. Make sure it's reasonably intact and hasn't been tampered with. And just see for yourself. The difference in quality is just phenomenal. I could present this blind to a malt whisky connoisseur and they think it's a single malt. This, no chance. No chance. The difference is it's not even superficial. You hardly know they're the same whisky. And now what I'm saying here is basically what I was saying 14 years ago in 2010. It just shows you some things never change. But I'm coming to this from the perspective as a single malt whisky drinker. My personal journey has become far more complex by my desire to educate myself about single malt whiskies. And stuff like this, Chivas Regal, Dewar's, it barely registers on my radar these days. The only reason I would have this, if I've got a visitor who wants a cocktail, I'll just throw this with ice and shove a slice of lemon over the top. And maybe put in a wee bit of herbs, mix in a bit of herbs and tart it up a little bit. They'll be happy. But you know, if they're not into whiskey, there's no point in wasting good whiskey on them. I hope you found this insightful, interesting, and you might even find it reasonably entertaining. What am I going to give this as a whiskey mark? To its credit, it's a clean spirit. It's not badly made spirit. I've had malt whiskies that I know immediately are badly made. They're hot, angry, nasty. And I regard that as a form of fraud by the producers. Blatant fraud. It's faulty goods. But there's nothing faulty in this Johnnie Walker Red Label. It's actually relatively honest, and I bought it in the supermarket because it was discounted from £35 a bottle down to £20 a bottle, which is its realistic price. 72 out of 100 for that. for this, add another 8 marks. Yeah, it's really that much of a difference. Hope you've enjoyed this review. For my regular malt fans, it's a bit of a laugh, this, because I introduced this in my live stream. I do monthly live streams, but only for Patreon subscribers. And I got a really interesting question, because I do a Q&A session as part of it. It kind of goes on a bit, but, you know, they're great questions. And one of the questions was, Ralphie, when did the Walking Man in the Johnnie Walker label change direction? Now, I'll show you this. See, in that bottle, Johnnie Walker is walking from that side. He's walking down the label, right? See the way the label slopes? He's walking down the label. But in this bottling, he's walking up the label, right? They changed the direction of the Walking Man in 1999, just before the millennium, because they felt, and they won't say this and they won't admit this, but it's a bit of psychology. On the old label, Johnnie Walker is walking downhill because the label always slopes that angle, that direction. Whereas in the turning him round, he's going uphill. In other words, he's ascending, he's getting higher. It's a very subliminal psychological trick. And I believe that's the reason they changed the direction of the Walking Man. I have to stress, that's just my opinion. And what do I know? Because I'm just an old whiskey hack who sits in the bothy and gives you an opinion. And hopefully you find it engaging, informative, entertaining, and humorous as well. No harm in that. And my final word in Johnnie Walker Red Label, I don't have an issue with it. It's honest. And so long as you're not paying a whacking great premium just for the label, you're home and dry. It's just a practical jobbing, blended Scotch. But let me tell you right now that your own brands from the likes of Costco and Walmart, and they're probably better. There you go. Bye-bye.